you'll spend half the year in an airplane or whatever. Know all the hotels around the world. First time I slept in the Ritz in Madrid, I thought, hey, I'm in the Ritz in Madrid. And after 20 times, I say, hey, I'm back in the Ritz again. So, the first few trips are great, but later, you like to get home and things like that. But, still, it's all about going out with clients, not going to, dodgy places, whatever, but, spending some time with clients face to face to know them, to understand what they're doing, to make them confident that going to a bank is the right thing. So there's the sales, there's the risk side of it. There's also, after that, the parts we've been talking about, which is the financing part. Working with the team, financing the trade, working with the team, also working on providing shorts or some other kind of methods to finance the trade, and on the execution side after that, which is finding, when you speak about stock markets, it's very easy because the stock market is electronic, you just have to put the order to it. But a client might want to call you for size. He says, I'm on a blog, I'm doing 100,000 pounds telecom. Tell me a counterparty. So there's also this work, which is going to be to work with other banks on finding, trying to have this trade. All those positions are what we call very front office related, which means, and that's something which is really clear in banks. You've got what they will call the profit centers and the cost centers, which ultimately is something to be also do. If you don't have the operations that are going to solve all the trades, sell all the trades, you're not going to be able to do any business on the front side. But still, they make the difference between what brings in money and what's associated to build, to maintain the infrastructure to get this money in the house. Usually, the good people, when I say good, people with ambition will tend to work on the front office side. Reason behind it is very simple. You get paid better. Although money is not the only thing you've got to throw to say, oh, that's money. Money is usually the reward that you get to the bank. You work hard for the bank, and the bank gives you back in cash. But also, it's not only about cash, but if you do your job properly, you'll get some money back. And effectively, working in front office and middle back office positions, and I found it more rewarding to work in front office in terms of cash, but there's also reward as the bank will see and will have an image of you because you help grow the business. So, that doesn't mean you shouldn't work initially for a cost center or a non-front office position. This is not, it's not dirty or evil intention. And you realize a lot of things. Knowing how it works behind helps a lot after that. A lot of people that have been working on these middle back office positions have been in office positions on the trading side. One of the most famous guys around that is Jean Cadet, but that doesn't mean, it's not example, but it is true that knowing how it works and understanding the mechanics of how the trade is important. After that, it's also, you've got to understand that you need to have some geographical mobility in this kind of environment. Investment banks, when I started to work back in the 90s, the big American banks were really dominating the whole business. And it was very US-centric. Initially, I worked for Morgan Stanley in London, which was already something like 10,000 people. Yeah, it's a huge number. And with 10,000 people, I felt like I was working in a remote place in south of France. We had no power, all the powers in the US. Back after that in 2000, the shift has been moved more over now to Europe. So Europe and US are now the two main centers, but we clearly see Asia now pushing up. So, if you work in a bank, they're going to tell you, okay, we need you in the US for 2 years, and that's about, we're going to need you in Hong Kong for 2 years, or we're going to need you in London for 2 years. We've got to be prepared that this is going to be asked to you. You have some banks that, will ask less mobility, more regional banks. When I think of French banks such as SocGen or BNP, those banks are very, very Paris-based. I would say very Paris-based. It's like no decision is made out of Paris. But banks like Morgan's, Goldman's, JP Morgan, not JP Morgan too much, but all the very active investment banks are very active this kind of mobility. So don't be afraid of this. It's usually very nice. I've lived in London, spent a lot of time in the US, spent a lot of time in Asia. All the cities are very similar, just different people. But all the cities around them are very similar. You get the same quality of life around the world. But if you want to make some progression in the bank, it's a hard thing. If you imagine the distribution of I guess you started to see that most of the banks work in this level. We've got analysts, associates, vice presidents, executive directors, managing directors, and some of them have partners or senior partners. And the way it works is, it's slightly 1 on X curve. That means when you're close to 0, close to analysts, you've got a limited number of people, and it goes down very steeply. You have a very little number of managing directors or executive or vice presidents. And moving down this curve to the thinner part is all about your attitude, your capacity to work, but also understanding what the bank is asking from you. Understanding, you don't want to suffer from what's happening in the market. You want to understand what's asked from you and how to progress. One of the big things in the progression is not essential to the process. You're never going to be promoted if you're essential to the process. The fact that you're not on the desk is going to be fatal for the desk to run. Because it's wrong in the sense that that means you hold some information, you've not shared some information with the rest of the team, which is not good. It's not good for the business. So being transparent, being trying to make the business grow, trying to leverage the people around you is very important in terms of being able to progress in investment bank. There's a lot of politics. People don't throw chairs at you physically, but it's actually very hard. You've got to learn to swim and not to drown. There's no rule book for that. It's all about maybe going at the gym also at lunchtime to get out all the bad energy or whatever. But there's a lot of things that you can learn at school around pure hard science knowledge, but learning about how to interact with other people is very hard. And this is something you have to learn on your own, and it's pretty hard. But it's also essential in this kind of big things. And that's pretty much it. What I wanted to throw at you in a very raw manner. Questions I encourage.